Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about SOLIDWORKS PDM. Specifically, this is an intro to Dispatch, a block programming language built into PDM. My name is Dan Wang, and I'm an application engineer here at DesignPoint. Now, this presentation is specifically targeted to PDM admins with PDM Professional, as this is a feature only available in PDM Pro. Okay. So what is Dispatch? Dispatch is a built-in PDM add-in. It actually is already integrated into your software. And if you don't have it set up already, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to import that into your Vault. Now, like I said before, it is a block-based programming language. And what this means is that it's relatively simple for people who are not familiar with programming to use this as a way for you to build custom tools within PDM. And along with the customization part, you also get the automation portion. So this is great for people who are doing repetitive tasks, people who want to also streamline their processes. Okay. So if you want to access your Dispatch add-in, you can see right here, if you look at my mouse cursor, here's my vault. My vault is called Dispatch. And underneath the add-ins node, there is the Dispatch add-in. This sits also beside your SOLIDWORKS task add-ins that are used for PDF conversion. Now, if you double click on that, you'll see this screen. And within this screen here, you can click on administrative actions to bring you the dialog where you can actually see the different dispatch scripts that might be in your vault or maybe in your vault in the future. To create a new script, you would just click add here. Okay. Importing dispatch add-in. Okay, so if you don't see that add-in, my recommendation is to right click on your vault name, select import, and then go to this directory. Okay. Now this webinar will be recorded and will be posted after this duration. So you can feel free to reference this webinar in the future. Okay. So the location of the add-in is within this location. You would just want to go ahead and follow the steps, go to the right location, change the file type to all files, locate the dispatch.caf file, and open up that file to import it. And then it should be underneath your add-ins node. So after you have that imported, the next question is, how do we go ahead and create a new dispatch script? So in order to do so, you want to go ahead and open up Dispatch, double click on it, click on administrative actions, and then click on add. And this begins your process of creating a brand new dispatch script. Okay. Now I'm going to be talking about a couple of different options that you have within Dispatch. And those specifically are triggers, variables, and actions. So I'm just going to go back and we're going to go ahead and talk about each one. So these three parts act as a whole for you to create your dispatch script. Okay. Now, like I said before, it's a block-based programming language, which means you basically have these blocks and you're going to basically combine these blocks like Legos in order for you to have it do what you want it to do. So you basically, if you have a problem at hand and you want to think about it logically, think about what it needs to happen, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, in order for you to be able to do what you want. Okay, so the first thing is dispatch triggers. So these are essentially the 4 different ways for you to have the dispatch script activated. Okay, so the first option is menu command. So if you check the menu command box, it gives you an option to, for example, right-click on a file and launch the dispatch script like that. This is similar to how you would create a new folder or check in a file, check out a file. It's all in that same menu bar. So this is also similar to how you would launch your PDM convert task if you want to do it manually. Okay, and you can see if you click on that, you can go ahead and type in that line, and that line will basically be what is shown up in your menu bar. If you put the backslash between your words, it actually creates a different menu string, allowing you to also organize your menu so that when you right click on a file, there's not too many items showing up at once. The second way you can actually trigger dispatch your script to run is with a state transition. So the state transition allows you to activate this script either before or after the state change has happened. So for example, if you have let me just go ahead and pull up a workflow for us to take a look at. So for example, if we have a workflow here, we're going from pending approval to approved, okay? So you can tell the dispatch script to run before it goes to approved or after it goes to approved, okay? And then you can also define the folder path location. So this can be as specific as certain folders in your vault, okay? So we have, essentially, if you think about it, it's folder permissions and state permissions. Okay, another option that you have available to activate the script is on checkout or check-in or undo checkout. You can see that here. And once again, you have the after or before the action actually happens. And you also have the ability to define the folder location as well. Okay, next up, during add. So during add is when a file is added to the vault for the very first time. So this is what happens when people copy files into the vault or do a save as into the vault to save that file for the first time. And during that add operation, you can have it defined by when this script is triggered and what folder location this dispatch script should be triggered under. And this is helpful for one scenario where you might want to write dispatch script is when you want people to automatically check in files. Okay, so in some cases, you have users who are very bad at checking in their files. So when you can set it so that whenever they add a new file into the vault, it's automatically checked in. So of course, there's pros and cons to that, but that's one way you can use dispatch. Okay, the next portion we're going to be talking about is dispatch variables. So on the left-hand side here, you're basically looking at the blank dispatch script. We talked about the activation methods earlier. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the variables. So if you click on the variables button, this dialog will show up. And here's a list of the different types of variables, dispatch variables, that you can create. Once again, I just want to reiterate that is dispatch variables. This is separate from your PDM variables, okay? Your dispatch variables are only used within this script, okay? Now you can always go ahead and get a value from a PDM variable. For example, if you look at the very last type here, variable value from selected file data card, that will allow you to extract the value from PDM variables. Okay, so here's the different options that you have here. Now, most people, when they get to this step, they're often confused by the large amount of options. What do they do, right? So that's the question. And so I just want to point you to a great reference. I'm going to go ahead and change over to my browser. And if you go ahead and browse to, for example, if you're in Google and you browse to PDM Dispatch Help 2020, it actually brings you to the help page for this, and there's actually a good amount of information in here about what each action, what each variable does. So for example, I have a specific page pulled up and we're looking at actions. Here's another one with variables. So for example, if you wanted to know what variable value from selected data card does, there's a brief description on what that does. Okay, so just go ahead and reference this help page for more information. Okay, and once you select the type that you want the variable to be, go ahead and click on this arrow button, which gives you the ability to use string functions, arithmetic functions, other variables, predefined variables as the value that the dispatch variable should be equal to. Okay. Once again, if you're confused on how to use these functions, left, right, mid, what does that do? Reference the PDM help page. So here I have another page pulled up. This is within your dispatch help page, and this lists the functions for variables. So here's left, for example. So left returns the leftmost specified number of characters from a specified string, and then it gives you an example. Okay, so once again, these are tools for you to use. You don't have to use them, but the more you're aware of how these functions work, the easier it is for you to actually come up with different ways for your script to run. Okay, next up, after variables, so this is the default dispatch script page. We clicked on variables earlier. We clicked on activation earlier to take a look at that. We're going to click on add here, and this allows us to add commands. Okay, so these commands are basically, these are the blocks. Okay, so once you click on these actions or commands, it gives you a further dialog box giving you instructions on what information it needs for that command to actually happen. Okay, so once again, if you're confused on what something in here does, reference the PDM help page for dispatch. Okay, so another thing to note is that these commands run from top to bottom. So as you start adding the different commands, it's going to show up row by row. And when the dispatch script actually runs, it actually runs from the very top line. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until the very end. Okay. And then if you're familiar with programming, you might be asking, how do we create if-then statements? Okay, so you would want to utilize the jump and the label command in combination to create your if-then statements. Okay. So here's some best practices. Some best practices is to always, for any programming language, to outline and write out the steps of what your script should do before actually creating the script. Okay. That means simply think about the goal of what you're trying to do or trying to automate. Write down the steps on what you think how PDM should be able to get there, and then figure out what dispatch scripts, variables, triggers that you would need from there to get those steps to actually occur, and then write your script. If you just go ahead and start jumping into your dispatch actions, you're gonna spend a considerable amount of time debugging your code, organizing your code, and it's just going to drive you crazy. So just go ahead and outline your code first. Okay. The second thing is to always create and fully test your script in a test vault first. Okay, so dispatch gives you a lot of capabilities outside of what PDM out of the box can give you, and that's good and bad. So you can actually accidentally change things that you might actually not want changed in your production vault. So go ahead and make sure you test this out in your test vault first, and then go ahead and save and load that over to your production vault. Okay, another best practice is to start your dispatch variables with the prefix D underscore. Okay, like I said earlier, your dispatch variables are actually isolated and they're not connected to PDM variables until you tell it to. Okay, so it's a different type of variable. So in order for us to not make that confusing for anybody, use the D underscore prefix when naming your variables. We're gonna go ahead and jump through a case study after this to show you what that means. Next up, use the OK message box dispatch action. Okay, so that's basically, if we look at the dispatch actions, that's located right here, OK message box. And what that does is basically you can put different variables in that action, the OK message box action, and it will actually display that to you as a pop-up when that step runs. Okay. So if you have like 10 steps, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for example, you were curious to see what the dispatch variable value at step 5 is, go ahead and put the OK message box in step 4. So right before it goes to step 5, or maybe after step 5, you can see what the dispatch variable value is equal to. Okay. So that's part of debugging. Dispatch doesn't have a very good debugger tool. This is basically the best way to debug your code. Okay. Another best practice is save a copy of your dispatch script to another location. Okay, so once again, you back up your data. Make sure you're saving out and backing up your dispatch scripts, especially if it's a very long and complicated script. Okay, another thing that we want to mention is, once again, the PDM help dispatch script. Okay, dispatch page guide. So you would want to reference this page for any clarification you might need on what that thing does. Okay. Okay, great. So we're gonna jump into a case study. So this case study, the goal of this dispatch script that I'm trying to write is to basically automate something that a user does on a daily basis, and also prevent him from making a mistake when transferring the data. Okay, so whenever you have users transferring data from one place to another, like the game of telephone, something might get lost, right? Or someone might accidentally type in the wrong value. So why not automate that, right? So we're gonna go ahead and create a dispatch script that transfers a value from the quote file to the leads tracker file, okay? And then once again, you might be wondering, maybe this doesn't matter to me. Maybe, okay, so let me just throw you another one. Maybe you wanted to update this value for multiple files. Okay, so maybe we had something important on the quote file on the data card that we wanted to be replicated or have the same information on 5 other files, right? So if we think about speed, we can use the dispatch script to do that for us. Okay, so for this one, we're just going to transfer the subject value from the quote file to the leads tracker file. And here I have laid out the steps, very basic. 1, we're gonna get the value from the quote file data card. 2, we're gonna check out the leads tracker file, because in PDM, in order for you to make a change to your data card, it needs to be checked out. And then we're gonna have to set the data card value from the quote file to the leads tracker file. So that's basically transferring the subject variable. And then we're going to go ahead and check in the leads tracker file to save the changes. Okay. And just some considerations that I might think about after laying out the steps are, what combination of dispatch actions, variables, and triggers do I need to make this happen? Okay. And then another one is basically, how do we prevent this dispatch script from being run on the wrong file, right? So are there any measures to prevent that, right? And then another one is maybe how can I get the most amount of automation using the script? Okay, so you can create scripts that get you cut out half the amount of work, or you can create a script maybe that cuts out all of the work that your user has to do. So just some things to think about. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump over to my other screen. Okay, so here is my PDM admin tool. I'm inside my demo vault. Just go ahead and close that. I'm gonna go into add-ins. I already have my dispatch script loaded, so I'm just gonna go ahead and double click on that. I'm gonna click on administrative actions. And I already have that script written out right over here. Okay, so it's triggered with a menu command. And here's the different actions that I have in order to get to there. Okay, and also here's the variables that I basically created in order for us to get this to work. I'm just going to go ahead and run it. So whenever you make a change to a dispatch script, just make sure you click through the boxes and get to the admin tool to make sure that the changes are reflected into your vaults. Here I have a sample, an example of what I'm trying to do. So whenever I have a project, a new project, these files are automatically created for us using the PDM templates. Okay. And we're gonna transfer the subject data card value. So we can see here, here's my leads tracker file. It already has a subject because I was testing this earlier. And here's my quote file. So we're gonna go ahead and change my quote file. We're gonna say this is PDM webinar dispatch. We're gonna save that. And you're gonna look at my leads tracker, it's still test one. I'm gonna go ahead and right click on this file. I'm gonna click on this icon here, transfer subject from quote to leads tracker. And it asks me, do you want to update the subject variable? I'm gonna say yes. And here's my OK message box. So this is what I was talking about. This is not necessary when you have a fully tested script, but I was testing it earlier. I wanted to make sure I had the right values for each of my variables, and I did. So I'm gonna click OK. And it's gonna go ahead and do that. If I click on my leads tracker, you're gonna see it now says the same thing as my quote file, PDM webinar dispatch. Okay, so let's take a look at the time. It's 11:26, we have till 11:45. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually dive through on actually creating the scripts because we have the time to do so. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on dispatch and we're gonna create a new script to do this. So I click on add to create a new script. The action name is, we're gonna say update subject value from quote to leads tracker file. Okay. Description is not necessary. We're gonna say this is activated through a menu command, but it can be activated through a list of other things. We're gonna say, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and copy this over here. And we're gonna say, we're gonna do this, dispatch backslash. We're gonna put it underneath a submenu. Great, we're gonna start creating the script now. I'm gonna do a, we're gonna go ahead and create some variables first. Okay, so we're gonna click add. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new variable. So we're gonna go ahead and create a variable that is d_subject, right? Because that's the PDM variable that we want to grab. And keep in mind here, I put d_ as the prefix. Great, so I selected the variable, that's good. I'm gonna add another variable for, let's see here. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll just do that for now. Oh yeah, so let me think. Runtime variable, yeah, we'll just do that. Great, okay, so we're gonna click add, and we're gonna add a new action command. We're gonna say for all documents. What that means is that if I select multiple files in my vault, for example, if I selected multiple files in my vault and I ran it on there, it would run it for all files. If I did not have that, if I did not have this command here, it would not run it for all files. It will only run it for the very first selected file. Okay. And whenever you're doing a for all documents, you also want to do an end for all documents. So there's always a start and end. Okay. Great. So now we're going to go ahead and check out the file. And you can see here that it needs the full file path. Okay, so how do we get the full file path? Okay, so we're going to have to extract the project information on here, because if you take a look at my file path name, this is static because it sits in the same folder. But we have the project name here that we need to grab, which can be different. So for example, if we go ahead and use my template to create a new project, we're gonna see 2.4 here. It's going to go ahead and create those sample files that I always use in my project. I'm gonna jump into my quotes folder. You're gonna see the same files here. And you're gonna see the project number actually in the data card. So we're gonna actually grab that to help us finish off this file path, just because within these names, the thing that changes is the project number, depending on the project. So we're gonna go ahead and grab that. Project number, d_project number. Click OK. And we're gonna say this is, you can see here that we have a bunch of predefined variables that you can grab from. We're going to use directory of selected files, but you can see here that our variables that we created earlier are located under this submenu. I'm going to use directory of selected file. We're going to do \, and we're going to do project number, and the file is called leadstracker.xlsx. Right, so if you take a look at that, the directory is this, right? So the directory is this. The \, project number, so our project number is giving us this portion. And then the thing that changes the file name is _leadstracker.xlsx. Click OK, it's going to go ahead and check out that file. We're going to do a set card variable. So we're going to click on set card variable to go ahead and essentially push that subject of value into the lead tracker file. So I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this file path. Click add. We're going to go back to set data card. And you're going to see here that we have a couple of different options. So we can set the variable for the current file. We're actually going to set it for a specific file, right? So that's the leads tracker. So we're gonna select the quote file, but we're gonna basically have the quote file, that subject value, go into the leads tracker subject value. So that's the file path location for the destination. The destination card variable should be subject. And here it's going to ask us for the value. So that value is going to be d_subject. So d_subject is the subject value from the source file. Okay, so that's from the quote file. Click OK. And once we check out the file, we want to make sure we check in the file. So if we click check in, and we're going to say updated JSON dispatch script. Great. And then just as a debugging tool, we just want to make sure that we have the right values. So I'm going to use my OK message box. Click on my OK message box, and you're going to see that over there. So we're going to click OK. And this is going to help us verify that we have the correct values that are going on further down the line. Okay, so I think we're in a good shape there. We're going to go ahead and jump into our vault, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and check out this file so that we have a value in the subject. We're going to say test, and I'm going to go ahead and right click on it. And you're going to see my dispatch with my submenu string. I'm going to click on that. And here's my OK message box. It's saying that my file path is, for the leads tracker, is this, which looks right, plus this, which looks right, and click OK. And if we go to my leads tracker, you're going to see the subject is test. Okay, so if we want to do it again, or maybe say test, test. If we look at the leads tracker, it's still test. I'm going to run that over there, and it's going to go ahead and push that value to the leads tracker, test, test. Okay, so we have the basic functionality down. The next question is, how do we make sure that someone isn't just accidentally right-clicking on it and just executing the code, right? So there's a couple of ways around that. We're going to go ahead and jump back into dispatch. And we're going to go ahead and click on, I believe it was this one. Yes. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and use the jump and label command. Okay. So jump and label, we talked about this earlier. Jump and label is your alternative to an if-then statement. Okay. So actually, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the OK message block, but that's essentially your if-then statement. We're going to go ahead and use, let's see here, a yes/no message box. Okay, so click yes, no, and this is basically going to be saying, do you want to update the subject value for the leads tracker? Okay. And then we're going to go ahead, and you would need a variable for that because it's going to push a variable. And we're going to say the runtime variable. So runtime variables are variables that can change throughout the course of the script. Okay, so we're going to say d_, yes, no, click OK. So it pops up here. We're going to say the value is 1 for yes, 0 for no. So essentially what's happening here is that we have the string. It says, do you want to update the subject value? It gives you a yes or no option. If you click yes, if the user clicks yes, it equals 1. If the user clicks no, it equals 0. Okay, and that value is put into d_yes or no. Click OK. So we have that. How do we utilize that? So we're going to go ahead and click add again. We're going to create a label. And that label is going to say end. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and drop that down to the very end. And we're going to use, now we're going to use the jump command for an if-then statement. So we're going to say if d_yes, no is equal to 0. So if they don't want to run the script, the underscore yes no should be 0. We're going to say go to the end, which means it's going to completely skip over all the code that we just ran and just go straight to the end. Click OK. And that looks good. And just for the sake of debugging, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our OK message box also has that information in there, just so that we can see the value. Okay. Click OK on there. And we'll see if this works. So we're going to go ahead and right click on the quote again. We're going to go ahead and change the value. We're going to say 323. Right click on the quote file, dispatch update. And you can see here we have the yes or no message box that pops up. Do you want to update the subject value? We're going to say no. Okay, so it should not have updated lead tracker. So if we click on lead tracker, you can see that did not check out, set the subject variable and check it back in. No action has happened. If we right click on it again, go to dispatch, click update. We're going to say yes this time. And you can see it progress through the code, and it says the file path, and you can see that the yes or no value is 1. Click OK, and it should have checked in the variable for that file, and you can see that it's test 333. Okay. All right, so that's basically a simple way for you to use dispatch. And that basically is the case study. Okay, so once again, if we just jump back to the slides, I just want you to make sure that we are always referencing the PDM help page if we have questions, and use the OK message box for debugging. Like you saw, it's very helpful. Okay. Now, the last thing is, how do we save out a copy of your dispatch script, right? So we're going to go ahead and jump back to our admin tool. Go to our demo vault. Let's go ahead and log in and go in their dispatch. We're going to see that we have, if we click on the dispatch script here, we have the options to save, load, copy, remove. Okay, so click on save, and you're going to go ahead and choose a location to save it. I'm going to just go ahead and save it on my desktop. And you could save in your vault too. That's also a good option. That way it's backed up on the server. You won't lose that. We're going to say update subject, and we're going to click save. Okay. So for example, if we remove that and we loaded it, we can click on the update subject, click open, and my script is still there. Okay, so that's how you would go about that. Great. Okay, so that basically concludes the presentation. We have a couple more minutes left, so if you want, you can go ahead and type into your chat box if you have any questions on dispatch. If you have any questions in the future, you can always feel free to reach out to info@design-point.com. We'll also have our next PDM webinar about going to a paperless system with using PDM templates on Microsoft Office documents. So I might be showing a little dispatch there as well, so feel free to attend that next webinar as well. Okay, so we'll just give you another minute to see if you have any questions. If not, then I thank you for attending, and I just hope to see you next time.